airing on the WB in 1998 for 8 seasons, Charmed follows sisters Prue, Piper, and Phoebe Halliwell as they became the world's powerful force for good, the Charmed Ones. You are listening to Utter Ramses podcast. I'm Lulu, your host, and on today's Flashback Friday, we're exploring the supernatural world, characters, production, and more of Charmed. The Halliwell sisters, Prue, Piper, and Phoebe, are reunited due to the death of their grandmother. After a bit of discussing, they decide to move into their family home. Phoebe discovers a book in the attic and reads an incantation from it. Unknowingly, this sets in motion a series of events that are meant to fulfill a prophecy. The sisters discover that not only do they have powers, but they also come from an exceptionally long line of powerful witches. The Charmed Ones are an ultimate power of good that needs 3 to be complete. So right now we're going to break down the sisters. There are technically 4 of them. Spoilers from this point on. Prue Halliwell, the oldest sister, had the power of telekinesis, and astral projection. After the death of their mother, Prue became responsible for her younger sisters, Piper and Phoebe. Fiercely determined, strong-willed, and overprotective, Prue was the strongest out of the Charmed Ones. Unfortunately, Prue was killed by a hitman of the Source, which is the ultimate power of bad, a demon called a Shax. This temporarily severed the power of 3 and ended the Charmed Ones. Obviously, her strong disposition isn't quickly forgotten, and her spirit helps the remaining sisters by turning pages in the Book of Shadows, which is the book that Phoebe read from in order for the women to get their powers. Prue was played by Sharon Doherty for 3 seasons. Piper Halliwell, the middle child up until the death of her sister Prue, she can manipulate molecules, i.e. freeze, explode, and heat material objects and even people. Piper just wants to have a normal life and is protective of her family. Piper often plays mediator between her sisters and had a timid and almost unassertive attitude until the death of Prue, where she adopted a much more sarcastic and more assertive outlook in life. Piper had 3 children, Wyatt, Chris, and Melinda, with her husband and Whitelighter, Leo Wyatt. Piper struggled with having powered children, and just like with her sisters, she went to great lengths to protect them. Because of her role as mediator with her sisters, Piper often held the role of peacekeeper and arbitrator. Her love for food led her to the culinary arts, in which she opened a bar called P3 and even a restaurant. Piper was played by Holly Maureen Combs for 8 seasons. Phoebe Halliwell, the youngest until the ultimate death of Prue, was a free-spirited and spontaneous person, and she took to her witch heritage the quickest. Phoebe had the power of premonition, and she could see in the future and past, and later she could astral project herself into the future. As her powers grew, she developed levitation and empathy. Phoebe became a columnist and writer and married Coop. They had 3 daughters, PJ, Parker, and Peyton. Phoebe was played by Alyssa Milano for all 8 seasons. Last but not least, Paige Matthew is bold and vibrant and was a half-sister of Prue, Piper, and Phoebe. Given up at birth to hide the forbidden love affair between Patty, their mother, and Samuel, Patty's Whitelighter, she was adopted by Mr. and Mrs. Matthews. Adding a new dynamic, Paige, like Prue, was telekinetic. However, because she was half Whitelighter, her power morphed into telekinetic orbiting. She later learned how to heal and produce a protective barrier around herself and others. While Paige entered witchhood late in life, she quickly wanted to devote herself to become a full-time witch. She struggled to find a job she was content with until she found her calling and destiny to become a Whitelighter like her biological father. Paige married a mortal named Henry Mitchell, and she had 3 children, twin daughters Tamora and Kat, and adopted son Henry Jr. Paige was played by Rose McGowan for 4 seasons. Charmed has a lot of recurring themes during its 8 seasons on air. They have a lot of non-reoccurring ones, and these are just some of the reoccurring ones. In Charmed, a number of magical beings exist. The beings can be benevolent. I'm not going to be able to say words today. The beings can be benevolent or malevolent. Malevolent. That's the word. Malevolent. And it's a pretty universal rule that their existence must be hidden from mortals or humans or people who don't have powers. The show revealed what could happen if magic and the supernatural was exposed to mortals. For example, in an alternate reality, Phoebe is executed. Not only was this because magic was exposed, but also because of personal gain, which we'll get more into a little bit later. Another time when magic was exposed led to the death of Prue. And in season 7, the sisters faked their death and lived under assumed identities because of exposure of magic. Season 6 had the introduction of the Cleaners, a pair of magical beings whose job is to warp and bend reality to clean up after events that left magic exposed. This introduction of the Cleaners was controversial. Was a controversial addition because many fans believe that this caused plot holes for the earlier seasons. So the Charmed Ones are meant to be a powerful force of good, which meant that the sisters could not use their powers to further their own lives or for their personal interest, i.e., personal gain. Doing so can lead to dangerous consequences similar to exposing magic. However, this theme is typically only used when it suits the episode's narratives and becomes increasingly ignored as the seasons go on, but it is a reoccurring theme nonetheless. The heart and foundation of the show is the relationship between sisters. Everything relies on the sisters' love for each other and their bond with each other, which allows the power of 3 to keep going. If this bond is broken or severed, even if it's not their doing and it's influenced by an outside force, the power of 3 and the Charmed Ones are no more. Magic and supernatural aside, the dynamic and bond of the sisters is also a key feature for individual characters. Phoebe and Prue often clash because of their opposite personalities, and Piper is typically seen playing peacekeeper for the two of them. When Prue dies, their dynamic shifts. Piper and Paige are often at ends with each other, and Phoebe ends up playing peacekeeper later. And this, for Phoebe, it might be because also she has the power of empathy, but yes. Diving into production, Charmed ran for 8 seasons with 178 episodes. When a show runs that long, there are bound to be major and minor changes in cast and crew. The biggest change in Charmed was the departure of Shannon Doherty, or Prue's character. It had a large impact on story and characters and saw the addition of Rose McGowan's character, Paige Matthews. Brad Kern, the then executive producer, openly discussed that budget was the reason behind many of these changes. Constance M. Bird, the creator and an executive producer, left at season 4. This departure saw changes in story structure, including the shift from Demon of the Week to more arcing storylines and seeing the protagonists in their daily and personal lives. Honestly, I liked that, but, not a lot of fans did. Charmed aired on the WB before it became the CW and saw many changes in the day and time that episodes were released. Charmed started out on a Wednesday. By season 2, it changed to Thursday, where it remained for 3 seasons. And, by the time season 5 came around, it changed to Sundays, where it played in the anchor show for the WB's Big Sunday event. Obviously, time and day a show airs can play a very crucial part and role in its ratings. When Charmed was moved to a Sunday time slot, it often competed against shows with very strong ratings, such as The Simpsons. Charmed cost approximately 2 million episodes per episode. When cuts happened, it could easily be seen in the antagonists' characters, such as demons. So when demons started off in season 1, maybe even season 2, they had incredible costumes and makeup, but it slowly declined as budget became less during those seasons, and demons became more human-like as budget suffered, i.e. Cole, because he also played Balthazar. You had this beautiful Balthazar makeup and costume, and slowly Balthazar became less and less, and we only saw Cole. That's just a big example that I can give. A notable cut was seeing characters being left out from the show entirely, but not having a death or a write-off like Prue, such as Brian Krause and Dorian Gregory in season 8. Kern stated that money had to be saved for Brian Krause, which is Leo. He played Leo Wyatt, which was Piper's husband, to be even in 12 episodes for a season. Another notable change was the reduction and even loss of Phoebe's powers. Her power of levitation was completely cut from the show due to budgets, and a story arc was also created so Phoebe had to regain her powers, and it made sense story-wise. Conclusion? Charmed became the longest running series featuring an all-female lead until Desperate Housewives was released. When it was released on Netflix, Charmed became its second most binge-watched TV series. CBS wished for a prequel to Charmed. However, it went back to redevelopment because, according to them, it didn't come back in the way that they wanted. They remained determined and constant through their efforts to reboot Charmed. However, in 2018, the CW ended up rebooting 2 shows, Roswell, New Mexico, and Charmed. Similar in the way Smallville continued their story for season 11 in comic form, Charmed did something similar for approximately 2 seasons. Each season had about 12 comics released, which continue to follow the story of Piper, Phoebe, and Paige. While many fans were excited to see this continuation of Charmed, especially with these specific characters, there were many questions about the return of specific characters, specifically Shannon Doherty's Prue. Zenescope, who is the rights holder for the comic version of Charmed, stated that Doherty declined to be involved in the comic, which included the use of her likeness. While Doherty's likeness would not be used in the comics for her story, however, would be able to be continued in other ways. Charmed saw a reboot October 14th, 2018, which, like the original, followed 3 sisters, Macy, Mel, and Maggie, who, after the death of their mother, discovered that they were the Charmed ones. The reboot had many controversies behind it. However, we will leave that for another Flashback Friday or even a midnight binge. Charmed was all about girl power and focused on sisterhood with magic and supernatural thrown into the mix. I would rate it 3.6 out of 5. Like most of the shows we deal with Flashback Fridays, especially the ones that were made in the 90s and early 2000s, there are outdated themes, dialogue, and more. Certain aspects of Charmed, though, were definitely ahead of their time when this was originally released. As of June 2021, you can find the reboot version of Charmed on Netflix and the original series of Charmed on Peacock. I definitely recommend both versions of Charmed, but for me personally, the original series will always have a very special place in my heart. So please consider supporting this podcast either here on Anchor, on Buy Me a Coffee, or Patreon. Follow me on Twitter at utterrando_Lulu. And until next time, cheers!